This is 6th grade, chapter 8.1 is ratios. I'm on page 402 in your book. So just like always, like I say on every podcast, would you please open up your book to page 402. I can't always put all of the examples or the words in there, so you need to follow along. So on page 402, the vocabulary is ratio, and that's written right there on almost right next to the vocabulary words. It says a ratio of a number A to a non-zero number B is the quotient when A is divided by B. Well, in other words, A divided by B, the way I've been telling you guys that fractions are just division problems. So a ratio is written in this form, A over B. So it's a fraction, basically, A over B. But there's also two other forms of ratios. So here, let's write ratios come in three forms. It comes in the fraction form, A over B. It comes in this form where we use a colon, A to B, or we could just put the word 2 in between it, A to B, like that. Equivalent ratios then also would be just ratios that are equal to each other, okay? They are, an example would be like 1/2 equals 4/8. 3/9 equals 1/3. And you'll notice this one we multiplied by 4 on both sides, the top and the bottom. This one we divide by 3 to get there. So equivalent ratios can be made. You can make fractions bigger, or you can make them smaller. Okay, so let's take a look at example 1. It says, music. In some school orchestras, all of the instruments are stringed: violins, violas, cellos, and double basses. How can you compare the number of instruments in the orchestra? So in the orchestra shown above, 8 of the 35 instruments are violas. The ratio of the number of violas to the number of instruments, and here's the important thing right here, the 2, so they're saying they want the number of violas to the total number of instruments. So the first part that was written before the 2, that goes on top of the fraction, you'll notice right here, and then the total goes here on the bottom. So the three ways that can be written is 8 over 35, or you could write it 8:35 or 8/235. And one thing that you need to look for is if the fraction can be reduced, you have to reduce it before you write the three forms. And we'll probably have one that'll come like that here in just a second. So let's take a look at example 2. Use the diagram below. Write the ratio of the number of basses to the number of cellos. So here's our key, our two words here. 2 is the part that splits it. We want basses to cellos. So it'll be basses on the top, since that was written first, over cellos on the bottom, since that was written second. So how many basses are there? There's 3 over the number of cellos, which is 6. That can reduce by dividing by 3. 1/2, 1 to 2, or 1 to 2. Okay, and then notice it did say in simplest form, so, and that's how they're reducing, so that's the same thing as we do, we just divide. Okay, so for the guided practice, it says write the ratio in 3 ways. Violins to total instruments. Remember, the total instruments was 35, so the violins would be 18 to 35, 18 to 35 this way, or 18 to 35. Let's see if we agree. Yep, and that couldn't reduce. When we were back in the fraction, you always look to see if it can reduce. But violas to double basses, so the violas is 8, that goes on the top, to double basses, which is 3. And I know this is an improper fraction, and we've talked in the last chapter that we want to divide that out, but we want to leave this since they were specifically talking about violas and double basses. So that can't reduce, so then the next way would be 8 to 3 and 8 to 3. Those would be the 3 forms. All right? So let's look at number 3. Write the ratio of cellos to violins. So cellos goes on top, violins goes on the bottom, and I notice that 6 can go into both of those. So that would be 1:3, 1 2, 3, just like that. So example 3, it says complete the statement. This is called writing equivalent ratios, and we've kind of done this a little bit with fractions. We have a missing part, so we have 5, right, so I can write on it a little easier. 5/15 equals what out of 60? So you look across at the two numbers that you know, and you think what times 15 would get me 60? And it's 15 times 4. And remember, whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. So we'd go 5 times 4. So that would be, the missing part would be 20. And that's what they want us to do, is figure out what is missing. And I believe their work is going to show kind of the same thing that we just did, multiplying them by 4. So there's our answer. Football Sophia completes 3/4 of her passes. Mike completes 7 out of every 10 passes. Who has the better record? Okay, so comparing ratios, this says using decimals. Well, one way to do it is to take the two fractions and switch them to a decimal. Now, both of these are pretty common decimals, but if you don't remember how to switch a fraction to a decimal, you divide the top number by the bottom number. So 3 divided by 4, and you add some zeros. 3 goes into 37 times, which is 28. Subtract, bring down. You have to keep going, you can't have a remainder. And 4 goes into 20 evenly. So that'd be 0.75. And anyway, 3/4 is 3/4. And 3/4 is worth 75 cents. 7/10 is really easy because it's already, you know, the tenth is the first decimal place. So it's just 0.7. Since we're comparing them, let's give them the same number of decimal places. And anytime I compare decimals, I think money. That's 75 cents, and that's only 70 cents. So Sophia has the better record, 75%, or 0.75. Okay? So let's take a look at the guided practice. So on this one, we're filling in the missing spot. We look across. 3 times 5 would be 15, so 2 times 5, that one will be 10. This one, we'll look across on the top. 7 times 5 is 35. Actually, let's do the other way. Let's divide. 35 divided by 5 is 7. 50 divided by 5 then would be 10, or you could just think backwards on the multiplying part. Go. Same thing here. I'm going smaller, so I'm going to divide by 4. Divide by 4, that one would be 8. Just a matter of knowing my facts. Okay, copy and complete the statement using less than, greater than, or equals. Same thing here. You can go, you know, so many ways you could go about it. You could get common denominators. I think it's easier to use decimals than common denominators. 4/10 is 0.4. That's pretty easy to do. 5/20, I can see that can reduce by dividing both of them by 5, so that would be 1/4. And 1/4 is 1/4, so that would be 0.25, and that would be, give them the same number of decimal places, and then it's going to be less than. And that's what they got. 3/5 blank 18 out of 30. And they're saying want to know less than, greater than. So 18 out of 30 looks like this. I can see that 6 can go into both of those. 6 goes into 18 3 times. 6 goes into 35 times. Guess what? Those are equal. Sure enough. Cool. And these are written in just a different form, so let's go ahead and write them like regular fractions here. Let's reduce them. This is equal to 1/2. 7 can go, and that's equal to 1/5. 1/2, if you take half of a candy bar, is bigger than 1/5 of a candy bar. The pieces would be smaller, so greater than. All right, so those are the ratios. There's 3 different types. Make sure that you show your work, and make sure if it wants 3 ratios, you show all 3. And I think that's it. We'll see you next time.